Welcome to Mecum Presents On the Move, brought to you by State Farm. It's the show geared toward keeping you up to speed with the latest auto news, event coverage, and expert industry insight. Now, here are your hosts, Matt Avery and John Kraman.
Hey, and welcome to another On the Move. We're so glad you've joined us today. My name is Matt Avery. I'm executive producer of The Transmission, and joining me is co-host John Kraman, lead TV commentator for Mecum Auctions on MCACN. John, today's show, we have back-to-back Bronco segments. We are covering both the classic as well as the most modern versions. First, we'll be talking with Seth Burgess. He is CEO and president of Gateway Bronco, one of the premier shops that's doing really radical builds, primarily focused on the earlier gens of Bronco. And then we're going to take things right up to modern day. In segment 3, we're connecting with Dave Rivers, who is the SUV marketing manager, including the new Bronco for Ford Motor Company. So lots of Bronco discussion taking place today.
Well, before we get going on that, Matt, how about we talk about the Las Vegas auction just concluded? And early reports is beyond everybody's expectations. Let me take you down, give you some details of it. First of all, the sell-through ratio, 75%. And we got a word from Dave Majors, Mecum CEO, that there has not been a COVID-era auction, and these are auctions that Mecum has held since June, that has been any less than 70%. So we may be on our way, with a couple of more auctions coming up by the end of the year, to see if we can set a new record for sell-through ratio in these unique times. $13 million in sales over 2 days of cars, and a really impressive top 10, very heavy in Ford and Shelby products. The top 10 cars at the top, 253,000, and number 10, 154,000. Let's just run down that list of cars. You'll see a little bit of a variety here. At number 10, F-129 was a 1929 Rolls-Royce Phantom 1 convertible sedan. Number 9, modern era, 2015 Nissan GTR Nismo, that was lot number S87. Number 8, split window Corvette Resto Mod, continued to be super hot. That was lot number S159. S126 was a 68 GT500 convertible from Shelby. Number 6, F139, a 66 Shelby GT350H. Number 5, a 2012 Lamborghini Aventador. That was lot number S119. S88, a 68 Mustang Resto Mod, mimicking a GT500. Unusual car at number 3, Matt, a 67 Ferrari P4 Replica. That was lot number F162. F-165 was an 06 Ford GT, a black one, by the way, and number 1 seller, again, showing the strength of Shelby and Fords at this auction, F-105, 1967 GT500 Fastback. That is an impressive top 10.
It sure is. Now, another vehicle that sold for very strong money was a 1972 Chevelle custom convertible belonging to Marc-Andre Fleury, goalkeeper for the Vegas Golden Knights hockey team. We had Mark on the show a couple weeks ago talking about the car, and part of that conversation was about what the car would bring at auction. Well, now we know it brought a very healthy $115,500. Now, John, as we wrap up 2020, it is quickly coming to a close, but Mecum Auctions is far from over, and we have several more events before we wrap up the year.
Right in the middle of Kansas City right now, and the folks at Gone Farmin, Davenport, also happening as we speak, going very well from both of them. We'll see everybody in a couple of weeks at Houston, and then, of course, already looking way ahead to January. 2 big auctions, world's largest collector car auction, Kissimmee, kicking off in early January, 11 days, 3,500 cars. We'll do over $100 million in sales there, at least that's expected. And then the end of January, as always, the world's largest vintage motorcycle auction, and that will be, once again, at South Point. So lots of stuff going on in the Mecum schedule, and I would highly recommend, if you've got got a motorcycle or a car that you're interested in selling in 2021 at the two big January auctions, do not hesitate. Plenty of great positions still available.
Something else to add to calendars is taking place this Saturday night at 7:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, and it's a special online video presentation brought to us by our friends at the Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals. John, you and I regard this show as the premier event on the planet when it comes to world-class muscle cars. You and I love heading down to Rosemont, Illinois every November to take it in. Sadly, it will not happen as it normally does due to some live event restrictions in the Chicago area. However, they have put together what they're calling the MCACN Northwest 2020 video. To fill us in more, joining us now is Bob Ashton, managing member for the show. Bob, tell us, how did the plan for this online feature come about, and what can listeners expect when they tune in?
Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's been a challenging year for all of us. So what I normally try to do is think of the opportunities that arise from these challenges that we're all having to deal with. And a wonderful thing happened. We have some gentlemen from the Portland, Oregon area that have been huge supporters of what we've done since our inception. Some of you that know, are familiar with the show, are familiar with the many cars that have come in that are tagged from the Brothers Collection. The Brothers Collection is bar none the absolute finest collection of American muscle anywhere. I mean, not just in quantity, but the quality is just amazing. Quick example, they showed 4 of the 8 '69 Trans Am convertibles with us. They've shown 10 Hemi E-body convertibles with us. The Hearst old prototype. I mean, the list just goes on and on. But anyway, through the support of the Brothers Collection, they offered to host us, have us come out for a personal behind-the-scenes look at their brand-new museum out in the Portland area. So I was thinking about what would be the next best thing to being at MCACN, since obviously under the circumstances we can't be there. And my thought was, what about a behind-the-scenes look at the Brothers Collection?
So take us into the world of the Brothers Collection, and what can we expect to see? And also, I understand that there is quite a Mecum connection with that group of cars as well, Bob.
Well, there is. And as you know, John and Matt, these guys buy the best of the best. They restore the best of the best. And over the years, we got to talking about different cars, and I've actually had the honor and the privilege of seeing them actually purchase quite a few cars through the Mecum auctions all over the country. And with that being said, many of the cars that they've shown with us have been cars that they've purchased through the Mecum auctions throughout the world. And, the 69 Hearst Olds convertible was one of them. The Cherokee, the Concept 67 Camaro. And again, the list goes on. Several of the Hemi Cuda convertibles were purchased at Mecum auctions. And so we thought it was a natural thing to talk about how much luck they've had and the great cars that they've been able to find through Mecum auctions.
Part of this feature will highlight interviews with some of the top restorers and judges and other automotive personalities that are regularly found at MCACN. Bob, give us an idea of who you've got this year on camera talking about these cars.
Well, one of the neat things that happened with the brothers is that they really wanted to make sure that the emphasis was not necessarily on their collection, but also on the Muscle Car and Corvette National Show. And again, it just shows the huge amount of support they've given us since our inception. So one of the things we're doing is we're having special guests that are regulars at the MCACN show to kind of talk about different segments of the show and some of the special features that we have that will now be taking place in 2021. Among those guys, of course, several of my partners, Stefano Bimbi of Mickey Chicago and Charlie Lillard, who we all know. And we've had Dave Wise coming in, who's the Mopar aficionado and authority. We have Bob Perkins to come in and talk about our Pinnacle competition and Shelby's and Ford's of the Brothers Collection. Gary Riley is joining us to discuss our Ram Air Firebird Invitational. And he's also going to be pulling the cover off of 2 very special cars so that we can maintain another MCACN tradition, which is our premier unveiling.
Well, that sounds good, Bob. And as a review to listeners, if you want to tune in, be sure to check out the MCACN YouTube channel. Head over to YouTube, search for MCACN TV, and then Saturday night at 7:30 p.m. Central Time, the MCACN Northwest 2020 will premiere. And I can tell you, Bob, John and I will definitely be watching.
We're really excited about this. And as I say, it's the next best thing. And when that show opens, the feeling that you'll get will be much like that overwhelming sensory overload that you see when you walk down the steps at Rosemont at the Donald E. Stevens Convention Center. So I thank the Brothers Collection for allowing us this premier behind-the-scenes look, and look forward to everybody joining us to keep the momentum going for MCACN 2021.
Hey, Bob, thanks so much. We look forward to it. Let's give a nod out to the NHRA folks. They have just concluded their season, finishing out the NHRA finals. Were in Las Vegas this year, sponsored by Dodge, and all four of the Pro Class championship winners were repeat winners. At Top Fuel was Steve Torrance. That makes 3 in a row for him. Matt Hagan in his Dodge Charger, now a 3-time champ. Erica Enders-Stevens in her Camaro, 4 titles. We may have a chance, Matt, a little sneak preview of getting Erica on the podcast. And a really cool story about Matt Smith in Pro Stock Motorcycles winning his 4th title, but his teammate, his wife, Angie Smith, actually won that particular race. Matt got the championship, and she joined the 200-mile-per-hour club for the first time. So congratulations to NHRA for a successful season, and also thanks to Camping World for taking over midstream in sponsoring the NHRA national events, and they will be returning as a sponsor for 2021 as well.
Turning our attention to some car news, the name Power Wagon will be familiar to most automotive enthusiasts, as that has been one of the toughest trucks that Dodge and now Ram have ever offered. The model was first launched in 1946 and really was the culmination of what Dodge had learned building vehicles for the wartime effort. The early versions were very popular with the off-road community. They were well known for being durable, hardworking, and ready to serve. Little surprise, Dodge kept the nameplate around through the 80s before bringing it back in the early 2000s and has continued it to today, marking a very special milestone. So for 2021, Ram is offering the 75th Anniversary Edition Power Wagon. The exclusive content contains a unique grille, special badging both inside and out, 17-inch beadlock capable wheels, as well as other items like a premium leather interior. Plus, all of that is on top of the Power Wagon standard content, which includes items like a factory lift, locking front and rear differentials, and a 12,000-pound Warn winch. Look for the special edition to be arriving in showrooms later this year with a price of $65,250. John, I gotta say, I really like the Power Wagon. They're a blast to drive, and it's also really fun when a brand takes time to celebrate heritage, especially when it comes to the heritage of such an iconic nameplate.
No doubt about it, Matt. You know, the name Power Wagon has been synonymous with a rugged off-road vehicle under the Dodge and, of course, now the Ram nameplate. And I'm really glad to see that FCA is continuing to give a nod to their past, to go ahead and say, hey, you know, we've got a glorious past. Let's go ahead and build on that and promote that. And I think that's going to be a real popular option for Ram buyers.
Something else that's going to be a very popular option, not with Ram buyers, but with Jeep buyers, is news that the Rubicon 392, a vehicle that for a while we weren't sure if it was going to make it to production, is going to be found in showrooms as a 2021 model.
Yeah, one of the biggest automotive stories here towards the end of 2020 is the official introduction of the 2021 Jeep Wrangler Rubicon 392. Keep in mind, this is the first V8 ever to be installed in a Jeep Wrangler, and they've done it right. 392 cubic inches of Hemi power, 470 horsepower, 470 pound-feet of torque, 0 to 60 in 4.5 seconds, Rubicon trim only, and an expected base price of around $50,000. And boy, you want to talk about giving a 1-2 punch to all the excitement that Ford has generated with the introduction of the new Bronco, you gotta wonder if it's going to make some of those Bronco guys say, you know what, I'm going to hang in there for one of these V8 Jeeps.
I'm sure it will. John, a final story for today's car news comes from a friend of the show, and that's Don Prudhomme, the Snake. We had the world-class drag racer on the show earlier this year, and he mentioned a book was in the works. Well, it's been wrapped up, and it's now available for sale.
Yeah, in collaboration with Elena Shear, I got an early copy of the book, Matt, and it is incredible. It's called My Life Behind the 1320. The absolute perfect Christmas gift for any car guy or gal. You can get an autographed copy from the Snake himself at snakeracinggear.com.
Mecum Auctions is proud to bring you On the Move with Matt Avery and John Kraman. For more on the world of collector cars, head over to mecum.com. Now let's get back to the show.
Joining us now is Seth Burgess. He is the CEO and president of Gateway Bronco. He is an inventor and engineer with more than 40 patents or patents pending. He has always been involved with production, including low-volume military aircraft. He's passionate about classic Ford Broncos, launching Gateway Bronco just a couple years ago, but his automotive interests also extend to a love of Shelby vehicles. He's a member of the Shelby American Automobile Club and owns a 67 GT350 as well as a 67 GT500. Seth, it's so great to talk with you.
Oh, thank you so much for having us, Matt. Really appreciate it.
Take us back. How did Gateway launch and how has it grown since then?
Yeah, that's a great question, Matt. It was actually 2016, so it was 4.5 years ago. We started the company, and it happened really from a road trip. We had our oldest child was 17 at the time, and she asked if we could take a road trip in one of my old Broncos. And so we went from Walden Pond to Niagara to Glacier to Seattle and down Pacific Highway. And we got to know the Bronco pretty well. It's both its highlights and maybe some of its bad behavior. And so out of that 5,000-mile trip, we put up a Facebook page, and we found that we had 33,000 people following us. From that, we said we really like Broncos, but a lot of other people do as well. So that was really the genesis of starting the company.
Let's define just for a moment exactly when we say Bronco. There's a lot of different variations, generations, but all the interest in today's world, or most of the interest, is in the first run of the Broncos, the 66 through 77, what's referred to now as the classic Bronco. Seth, why do you think there's so much interest? It just has exploded with this little vehicle. Why do you think, how'd that get started?
I think I really have thought long and hard about this, John. And I think that part of it is if you look at the people behind the design, Lee Iacocca and Donald Fry were known and also a part of Ford versus Ferrari, right? They mentioned Donald Fry. He was a major part of Lee Iacocca's organization. And during the whole shelter and the GT40, a major part of that. But what people don't realize is he led the design of the Mustang. And then very quickly he moved and really developed the concept and the design for the Bronco. So you have kind of this iconic, product manager working for Lee Iacocca. So you got great heritage there. And then you've got a vehicle that stayed the same from 1966 to 77. I mean, it didn't change at all. And how often do you see that? A Corvette or a Camaro or Mustang, everything changes over every few years. And so you have kind of the 1965 Mustang that stayed the same for, 10, 12 years. And it just doesn't happen that way very often. And so I think you got a great design. You've got the staying power of 250,000 units built over a 12-year period there. So it's got just some unique characteristics that are kind of once in a lifetime.
Walk us through the range of vehicles that your team offers to customers.
Yeah, so in terms of a Bronco, they have three options from us generally. One is the Fuelie product, and it starts about $150,000 with a Coyote 5-liter engine, goes up to about $185,000 for most people that order that product. And then you have our Coyote Edition, which is a $250,000 product. adds really an engineered suspension to create a wholly different ride characteristics. And then you have what we call our Lux GT. That's as close as you can get to a Range Rover Sport and a Bronco body. Those are our three offerings, and we'll, of course, take on folks that have a Bronco already, turn that into what we do for one of our products, and we're completely bespoke. We'll do everything from a vintage Concours restoration to our Lux GT and everything in between.
Coyote power, man, what a legend already. First saw that in the Mustang in 2011. I own a 14 Mustang, and I just love that engine. What made you think that might be a good fit? And fill us in on how difficult is that engine to integrate, and how are the characteristics of it in that lightweight Bronco?
Well, number one, the Coyote is an absolute phenomenal powertrain. It turns the Bronco into a completely different vehicle. You mentioned your Mustang GT. We are essentially putting a Mustang GT powertrain into a Bronco chassis. And it turns it from an SUV to a sport SUV, not just raw power, but it's the responsiveness of the power. Fly-by-wire, it gives you this instantaneous gratification that our client is looking for. Many times a Porsche owner, many times a Porsche GT3 owner, they want to have this instantaneous gratification, and that's what they get with a vehicle like this. That is, again, not about raw power, but pure enjoyment. The steering response, the brake response, the throttle response. So how did we get here? I mean, Jonathan Ward opened this market. He built Icon 4x4, and I give him credit for really creating the marketplace for a Coyote-powered Bronco. And for a long time, I was the gentleman on the airplane looking at the magazine thinking, one of these days I'm going to order an Icon. Sold a company and decided that starting my own Bronco business was the better route, and that's where we are today.
When it comes to getting these trucks done, Seth, what's the average turnaround time for a completed vehicle to be assembled?
Well, generally, we're going to quote a year. Generally going to quote 12 months. But we do maintain some build slots that will help us satisfy the needs for folks that come to us now or in January. Asking for something in the spring timeframe. What we've learned that instant gratification is important, and we'll have blanks built up, not painted but ready to be painted and execute to build a vehicle. And we're essentially finishing a vehicle one per week. Through our assembly line, we're able to finish one vehicle per week.
Matt, I just got to ask you, these vehicles essentially look and perform as or better than new, of course. What's the relationship, if any, between you and Ford Motor Company on this project?
A great question. We have a license from Ford Motor Company that enables us to either restore under the guidelines and the quality standards of Ford Motor Company, or we can build brand new. And so, we are the world's first approved manufacturer of the early Bronco. So we can build a brand new vehicle from scratch, 2020 or 2021 model, and have it provided as a brand new replica through our license with Ford Motor Company.
So much buzz was created this year when Ford announced that Bronco would be returning back to showrooms. Seth, does that impact Gateway Bronco at all, or any thoughts from you about this new truck?
Well, number one, Ford put a lot of attention behind this, and we think that they just crushed it. It is an outstanding product. The overall design and the thought that's gone into that vehicle, we just think it is an outstanding product. In terms of the overall market, I think we have some history here where when Hemi came out, it raised the value of the vintage vehicles. When the Shelby Mustang came back to life in modern times, it raised the value of the vintage vehicles. And I think you'll see that pretty consistently throughout the marketplace. And in this case, we think it's going to do the same thing. It will create this market that is the new and the vintage, and those that want the vintage with modern will clearly be there. We think it also raises the value. It certainly has raised the attention of the vintage vehicles, and we couldn't be more excited about the overall market.
Taking a look at the website, it's clear that at least you folks have got a concept in regards to an electric-powered Bronco. Can you give us much information on that at this point?
Sure. We have 4 units in production currently, and very exciting. It is, it's a new development. Our client will both own a Tesla as well as a Ford Raptor many times. And we think that, it wasn't us creating the technology to go sell. It was people coming to us asking us for the technology, something that they said, is it possible to achieve 200 miles in an EV vehicle? Is it possible to maintain the original character of Bronco and make it completely electric? And all of these answers are yes. You mentioned when we started this, the technology background, and we've partnered with a West Coast company called Electric GT to do the dominant portion of the design on their core competencies in electric vehicles. And it's working out to be a powerful, reliable, and honestly very straightforward design in the end to provide 200 miles of range and power that's equivalent to the V8 Bronco.
Looking out to 2021 and maybe even a little bit further down the road, Seth, any hints about what's in store for the team at Gateway Bronco?
Great question. We have one that is that's public knowledge, and that is the F-Series trucks. We are deeply passionate about the F-Series trucks. Many call it affectionately the bump side. 67 to 72 pickups to be clear. We're also licensed by Ford Motor Company to build. We're building one right now with a crew cab with the 7.3 liter Godzilla engine and supercharged with an Eaton technology from Harrop USA. So 4-wheel drive, 4 doors, as long as a limousine, and more power than you could ever need in a vehicle like that. So that's in motion, and we'll be launching that early next year. The other thing you'll see is, we have about 125 of the new Bronco on reserve, and so that's an exciting development that we'll see coming up in 2021 as well.
Seth, I got to ask before we let you go, as a passionate enthusiast, what types of vehicles are you driving?
Oh, great question. I did just buy a 1970 crew cab with a big block Ford ready to haul anything. And you mentioned earlier on the call, I've got a 1967 Shelby Mustang road race car in Gulf livery, and we'll use that rig to pull the race car. Today, what I drove was an original paint F100 4-speed 360 truck. Love it. It's seafoam green and super reliable.
What is the best way for folks that want to keep in touch with you guys and keep tabs on current and future offerings?
Oh, well, certainly, our website, gatewaybronco.com. My direct line, my cell phone number is on the website, as long as our email. But our Instagram and YouTube channels, we have a couple of new film series that are coming out weekly. One is called Farewell Friday. So every Friday there's a new delivery, and we talk about the story behind the vehicle and the story behind the owner. We also have a Wild Horse Wednesdays that comes out, as it states, on Wednesdays, and gives you a little bit of in-depth as to how we create the vehicles that we do, and it's a bit more educational. So twice a week, YouTube, Instagram, and gatewaybronco.com.
Well, Seth, we really appreciate the time today. It is super clear that there's a lot of excitement for Broncos, both new and old, and we can't wait to see what's in store. Thanks so much for the time.
You're very welcome, Matt. Thank you guys for having us.
Don't adjust that dial. On the Move, we'll be right back. Our program is proudly presented by Mecum Auctions, the world's largest collector car auctions. Now back to Matt and John.
Hey, Matt, the hottest automotive news for upcoming 2021 is the reintroduced Ford Bronco and the Bronco Sport. On the phone today, we've got Dave Rivers, an insider, as the marketing manager for SUVs for Ford Motor Company. Dave, thank you so much for coming on to talk Broncos today.
Hey, John, thank you. And thank you, Matt. We are excited to be here. So much to talk about. Bronco as a brand, as various nameplates, tons of interest. We're excited to be with your listeners today. So thank you.
Well, I think partially due to the popularity of the original Bronco, the first gen 66 through 1977 over the last 5 or 6 years, rumors started to fly a couple, 2-3 years ago that Ford was going to be coming out with a new Bronco. And I don't think that it started to tie together until SEMA 2019. Matt and I both were there, where it looked like the big priority with Ford Motor Company was promoting the Bronco nameplate by bringing in countless, I don't know, was there probably close to 100 vintage Broncos on display there, sort of teasing what would happen. And that's the first time that I thought, maybe this Bronco is going to have the retro styling that we were all hoping for. Now that the reveal is official, that's happened. Take us back from your memory, the genesis. How did this all begin for Ford Motor Company?
Yeah, so it's an awesome story when you go back in time. And frankly, where we are at today, guys, it is so similar to the 60s when consumers were looking for something a little bit different than what automobile companies were offering. So dating back to the original Bronco of 1966, where you had families that were driving wagons and sedans, yet they were looking to kind of enjoy the outdoors a little more, where the GIs, if you will, from World War II were now in the prime of their living years. And the birth of this idea of what we called the original sport utility vehicle, Ford gave birth to it in the mid 60s. We had just out of a year before had the Mustang come to market, the original pony car. And there was this whole movement afoot to consumers, America wanting to get outdoors, and they needed a vehicle that was a little bit more capable than station wagons and the sedans of the 60s. And Ford had an architecture, we adopted some learnings from trucks. We had this Mustang in the market, and we said, hey, we were making these vehicles back. Ford was the original answer to the government's issuance of, we need a military vehicle that was capable of driving in tough terrain in World War II. And as GIs were starting to convert these vehicles, we said, maybe there's a market for it. So if I told you our study began back with the original program of the 66 Bronco, we went back into the archives. This dates back to about 3 or 4, maybe even 5 years ago now. We went back into our archives to date back what actually happened in the 60s. We pulled all the original program papers. We pulled all the original clay model imagery and images, the photographs. So, vehicles were photographed every Friday in the design studio back in that time period. We had all the original material. We had all the marketing material from back then. And we studied the heck out of what was going on then, because we said, if we're going to do this right in today's world, we have to be true to what Bronco always had been. And this consumer demand and interest in this outdoor world. And just I'll put a little bow on it. When you look at where we all sit today, the unfortunate circumstances of 2020, and a data point that we uncovered. Actually, this goes back a year plus ago. We uncovered consumer feedback that said we spend 93% of our time indoors, or in offices, or in cars and in parked freeways, and we yearn to be outdoors. We yearn for the time when we can get away from what we have, doing what we're doing from 9 to 5, let's say, and we uncovered this whole idea of a rewilding that folks were looking to do. And, we started to morph all these things together. And I'll tell you way more about the how we are where we at today. But we could not be where we're at today if we hadn't gone back and done the tremendous study that we did on the original 1966.
There is no denying all of the heritage that's been incorporated into the design. But Dave, your team was at a very unique position, essentially given white space to work with the launch of this entirely brand new vehicle. Was there ever a point in time when you thought about starting from scratch and coming up with something entirely new? Or was it always from day one about working in the legacy of those early Broncos?
Matt, that's a great question. Our design team and engineering team, they went to the extent of scanning an original, so our corporate head designer, Maury Callum, has a late 60s Bronco. The team scanned all of the angles, the entire vehicle into our system. And one of the things that we said, we kept hearing this over and over. And by the way, if I told you we have talked to thousands of customers on what they don't like about what they have today, what they thought that we should have as far as bringing a Bronco back. What are some of the things that they said we needed to make sure? One was it had to be true to the original, yet it could not be a copy of the original. So like Paul Wraith and his design team, having studied what the originals were all about through 5 generations, they said things like it's got to have flat surfaces. It's got to have an upright windscreen. It's got to have 2 round headlights, and it's got to have a single cartridge grill. I mean, those are all original elements of what the Bronco always stood for. And so as they started to take all that information around what customers loved about the original and what they didn't like about what they have today, and they dumped all this into their ability, to design and we borrowed a philosophy that Jim Hackett brought to us around designing for humans. I mean, it sounds really, really rudimentary, but human-centered design. And, the whole idea of if we're going to do this, we got to do it right. And, the one thing we all along had said is if this thing's going to be a Bronco, it's got to retain, many of the characteristics of that original, but it can't be a copy. It has to be timeless. And it also has to be meant for a purpose-built off-road machine of what a consumer would want for today. So very, very important to us that we nailed the design to go along with all the architecture and all the technological advancements on it.
Break down for us the different versions and the different models that are available during the launch year of 2021.
Yeah. So the funny, another area that we studied the heck out of is, how do you make it, interesting to consumers, having, let's call them consideration around a sort of sub brand of the vehicle and make it, stand on its own. So we studied, again, based on customers telling us that, some of the naming and nomenclature of our series just didn't seem to make a ton of sense. So through that feedback, we said, all right, what if we packaged and we had our series and our names commensurate with, vehicles that mean something to how the customer might want to use the vehicle. So we started to study things like, national parks, right? We started to study what are some other names that the company or the other brands in our portfolio have used, whether they're globally or for North America or the US. And we kept coming back to this idea of, national parks actually, Bronco has always had a history in national parks. We, back in the 60s and 70s, Broncos, and even the 5th generation through the 70s, 80s and 90s, Bronco had a role in U.S. Forestry Service, U.S. Park Service, DNR, things like that. So we said, the park system is kind of interesting to us. And we canvassed the entire country. We went through every U.S. national park, all the national forests. And we said, there's some that are really resonating in terms of what they could stand for and what we're trying to accomplish from a series standpoint. For instance, Big Bend, it's our volume model. It's a national park in Texas. It represents massive expanse. It's sort of it's a place that people can go in. They can enjoy a lot of different types of activities. And we said, all right, the Big Bend series for us is sort of the entry point, and it's a volume vehicle for us, and it's going to be well equipped, and it's one that kind of can serve a lot of purposes for a lot of folks that are going to enjoy the outdoors and do it with a fair amount of capability, let's say. So it's like Big Bend was one of them. We said, the Outer Banks on the east side of the U.S. and the National Seashore is kind of interesting to us. It's got a bit more of a design flavoring to it, with beaches and water, and so we named one of our series the Outer Banks. Our Baja series, sort of this is the pinnacle of high speed off-roading, which is what Bronco's all about. We borrowed a name from inside of another portfolio brand with Ford, and we called it the Wild Track. It's got that fast sound to it. Badlands is the utmost in capability. It's the highest in terms of, it's got front and rear locker opportunities, electronic sway bar disconnect, 35-inch tires from the factory in our Sasquatch package. So we wrapped the naming around experiences of what people can enjoy, along with what has been always important in terms of some of our heritage.
Now, an important part of the new Bronco story is the Bronco Sport. Dave, walk us through, how does that vehicle fit into the overall Bronco strategy?
Yeah, so it's a really great question, because we see Bronco as a brand family. And again, when we study consumer behavior and where the trends are, the utility world is growing like crazy, and Ford's been able to benefit. And we've got some of the best utilities, if not the best utility portfolio in the industry. And there's just this huge growth in utilities, which is why part of the reason, we decided to divest out of sedans, let's say, and just retain Mustang as our only car-based platform vehicle, because of consumer preference. But within the utility category, there's a lot of ubiquitousness. A lot of them look alike. And what we were seeing is this double-digit rate growth of rugged utilities. So, the projection is that people want something a little bit different than just a utility that is what it is today. And as we looked at that and this market trend opportunity, we said, you know what? There's enough room for us to have a larger size Bronco, 2 and a 4-door, the original 2-door, or the 2-door, original to the back to the 1960, but then a 4-door Bronco that allows, consumers to have more cargo carrying capability, a massive roof that I'll love to tell you about here in a minute. But then we said below that, there's the largest segment in the industry is the compact or mid-size, let's call it utility segment. And, there's not a lot of off-road rugged utility players in that. And we think that we can get more than our fair share of what that represents. So we said, you know what, we've got an architecture of a platform that could be modified. But it had to come with it. We had several stipulations. It had to be full-time 4-wheel drive. And we said, yep, we can do that. It had to, if it's going to be a Bronco, it's got to look like a Bronco. Everything that I said up front, it's got to have the upright windscreen, the round headlights, the one-piece grille. It's got to be 4-wheel drive capable. It's got to have great approach, breakover, and departure angle capability. And we said we have a vehicle that we could do that with. And so we studied it more. We said we can make this work and give our consumers an opportunity to go, if they want, the Bronco of small utilities, we can give them that. If they want the Bronco of larger utilities, we can give them that as well in a 2 and a 4-door variant. So Bronco Sport for us represents a whole new place for us to play. And frankly, we think that there's a population of consumers that are going to gravitate to that space. They want the capability when they need it. They love the outdoors. And frankly, the clear point of difference for Bronco Sport is that it is a vehicle that has tremendous interior capability. So they can put bikes in it. They can haul kayaks on the top. They can gear it up for camping, because frankly, they work 9 to 5. The consumer that we've studied, they work 9 to 5 and they play 5 to 9, and they pack their vehicle up in the morning. So as soon as work's over, they go and hit the trails. They go and hit the river. They go and hit the ski hill or the snowboarding hill. And Bronco Sport delivers everything that they need just for those things.
So 2 distinct platforms, the Traditional Bronco nameplate now available in a 4-door, 2-door, of course, also available, and then all new Bronco Sport segment, which is a 4-door. All these vehicles are all-wheel drive. Break down the powertrain choices for both series for us.
Yep. So you got on the Bronco Sport, you got a 1.5 liter, and then you got a 2 liter. They're both the powertrains. First off, every Bronco is always 4-wheel drive, right? So you have you don't have to choose between a front-wheel drive option and then a 4-wheel drive option. We said that that's DNA of a Bronco. It's always got to be 4-wheel drive, and it gives us a competitive advantage because you never know when you're going to need it. The beauty for Bronco Sport is the powertrains made into the transmissions, and the 4-wheel drive capability gives exactly the consumer that is going to do what they love to do, what they need. So we can go all the way up to our Badlands series on a Bronco Sport. It's got an advanced 4-wheel drive system, and the way that it's a twin mechanical rear drive unit, 4-wheel drive, so that it will put power to the wheels that need it. And I got to tell you, the places we've taken it to where it has followed behind the 2 and the 4-door Bronco, it can keep up. I mean, this is not like a little brother or somebody that's going to get left behind. It can keep up with every bit what a Bronco 2 or 4-door could do, but it will do it a little bit differently. The approach, departure, breakover angles are all excellent. So like I said, we've had it on some really, really tough terrains. We've tested it out in Johnson Valley, which is kind of our proving ground. We've taken it to Borrego. We've taken it up to Alaska and northern Michigan. It handles, snow and ice really, really well. So that's the primary powertrains on the Bronco Sport. The 2 and the 4-door, we've got a 2.3 liter standard with an optional 2.7 liter. The great news with Bronco 2 and 4-door, as the original, it has a manual transmission. So it's got a 6 plus a crawler gear. And then it's also got a 10-speed optional automatic transmission. I've driven them all. Consumers are going to love, once they get behind the wheel of either one of them.
So to be clear, Bronco Sport automatic only, and the regular Bronco series, the manual transmission, the 6-speed, called a 7-speed because of that crawler first gear, available with the 2.3 liter turbo 4. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep. Yeah. We, this is again, listening to our customers. There was a high desire to put, a base. And in fact, the newer news for us in the last couple of months is we're going to offer on the 2 and the 4-door what we call our Sasquatch package, which gives you the 35-inch tires, which is a big deal, made it to the manual transmission, and we're going to put it all the way down to the base series. It'll be a later availability, but consumer feedback was you really got to offer that even on a base series with a manual.
You mentioned consumer feedback, and expand on that a little bit more, including the reaction you got from customers and also how fast the first edition has sold out.
Well, here's what I would say is it was probably the toughest secret to keep in our entire portfolio. We originally had plans to reveal it a lot sooner than we did, but COVID impacted so many of us, and we took a pretty hard and which required us to keep the vehicles under wraps for a longer period of time. But it was the most sought after spy shot of what it was going to look like. And we were really, really purposeful about, in our preparation for the brand. And we realized so many consumers wanted to see it, but we really think it's important that we share with our interested consumers and enthusiasts that, Bronco is a brand family, right? So we wanted to make sure we established Bronco as a brand. It's a family of vehicles. It comes with a series of experiences. One of them in particular is our Bronco Off-Rodeo, which is a day and a half off-road driving experience that comes with your purchase of a 2 and a 4-door and a Bronco Sport Badlands. So it was really important for us to establish everything about what Bronco is, what's in the DNA. Every Bronco is built wild. which for us is innovative design, the utmost in capability, and built Ford tough dependability testing and principles that we draw off of our built Ford tough trucks. So every Bronco has those elements in it, but we realized our enthusiasts wanted to see what it was going to look like. So, we held as long as we were able to in order to tell our heritage story, our brand story. And then when we revealed on July 13th what the vehicle was going to look like, it wasn't our more proud moment because we couldn't get our website to work the way we wanted it to at the start. But we sold out, as you indicated. We sold out the first edition to the point where we had more demand for it. So we offered an incremental amount of units. We sold all that out. And, as far as reservations go, we have got over 190,000 reservations of Bronco 2 and 4 door. And, we're so appreciative to our consumers and to the enthusiasts. We realize that, folks want to know when they're coming. We're still taking reservations. If you go to Ford.com on Bronco or Bronco Sport, you can do build and price. So you can spec out the Bronco you want. We've had just a ton of consumer interest in building and pricing. I've done it a ton. I can't figure out which one I'm gonna do. There's too many choices almost, which is a good thing. And then so reservations are open. And as far as on sale goes, we're going to be going on sale later this month, early next month on Bronco Sport, and then springtime of 21 for Bronco 2 and 4 door.
Well, Dave, we really appreciate you taking some time out of your busy schedule to bring us up to date on everything that's new about the Bronco and the Bronco Sport. On behalf of Matt and myself, pass along our appreciation to your entire team for taking this concept and making it a reality. From all indications, a huge success coming right out of the gate. Funny you mentioned you've been on the configurator. Hard to pick out your choice. It's an easy one for me. Make mine a base two-door.
Yep.
With the steel wheels for about a $30,000 sticker price, and I'm good to go, man.
I love it, John. That's a great choice. The Steelies are awesome. Well, hey, we appreciate you guys inviting us. I get goosebumps every time we get to talk to, folks like you guys and your listeners. We can't do it without our enthusiasts, our consumers. Again, thousands of research hours have gotten us to where we are, and we can't do it without our customers. So again, we appreciate your time today, and we love talking about Bronco anytime we can.
You've been listening to Mecum Presents On the Move, brought to you by State Farm. For more information, visit Mecum.com. And join us again next time as we take you inside the world of muscle and collector cars and more.